The portal season has been a whirlwind, and it might not be just done yet. We talked to Daylan Flowers all about it.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast out there. I'm your host, Stephen Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member as well. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's now the number one sports podcast network in America. That is all because of fans like you tuning into content just like this. So thank you very much for that. On today's show, we're going to talk about this year's transfer portal cycle, how it might get a little bit longer, the highlights of it, anything that stood out over the last couple months. We'll go over all of that with Daylan Flowers from Ole Miss 365. All of this and more available on today's Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Remember, we're free and available on all of the podcast apps and on YouTube. And a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is, and that is your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. We put that same drive into every detail. Winning defines a moment. Putting in the work that defines you. Stay tuned for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. There's more to Mazda because there's more to you. Daylan, this has been an interesting week, and we will start off like there was the Clemson stuff that happened last week, and then all of a sudden it just comes out that the very first team that will be investigated by the brand new CSC of the LSU Tigers. I think every Ole Miss fan needs to send a thank you card to LSU, because that moment right there got Ole Miss completely out of the news and it's kind of back to normal.
Yeah, look, it's I think what's so interesting, what makes college football so compelling nowadays is, as much I think kind of backlash there is about NIL and the transfer portal, is the kind of most interesting thing about it is that there's been no rules or regulations about any of this. And whether you want to kind of refer back to Lane Kiffin at his time at Ole Miss, kind of saying that throughout the years, how there were so many problems, so many things that needed to be fixed. And you kind of get more coaches like Dan Lanning and Dabo Swinney over the last few months kind of speaking up about the portal, NIL, calendar things as well that have kind of been broken. So it's funny that college football has had so many, I guess, negative things from fans to be kind of looking at, but it's also brought so many storylines to college football over the last few years that have kind of, in a way, anticipated fans a little bit. I think that it's so interesting because, look, I think that Ole Miss was getting a lot of heat personally only because Dabo Swinney called Pete Golding out himself. Now, let's be honest. Coaches and other schools have been doing this exact same thing since this transfer portal thing has become a real thing. This is nothing new. Let's not act like it is. Let's not act like Pete Golding, Ole Miss are the first to do it, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it got so much hot news because you've never seen a coach per Dabo Swinney just come out and say it like that. And, I applaud Dabo, the things have not gone his way at Clemson over the last few years, but I feel like he had to take a stand in some matter because he tried to do something in the portal it feels like the first time ever and had to kind of fight back. But I think the LSU news also targets a little bit of what players may be trying to look at it for the future at LSU. And so I get that's a high commodity, but I definitely, I'm a little appreciative for it right now. And I hope everything goes Ole Miss ways in terms of the LSU news recently.
Yeah, my for you timeline on X is basically no Ole Miss on there at all for the first time in a week. And my video that I did on Saturday didn't do extremely well. So, yeah, it's kind of done as far as on the outside. And the reality is Tom Mars, who everybody knows is representing Trinidad Chambliss for the upcoming lawsuit of what's going on, he mentioned that he said it was no surprise that LSU was in the crosshairs of what was going on, whether it was originally for football or not, because they hired a football coach based on extra money being put into their program outside of the rev share, which technically could be outside the rules whenever you look. How will they be able to push that through unless they're just going to jump through loopholes? I do think that's interesting. I'm not calling them dirty. I'm not calling them cheating or anything like that. I'm just saying that the target got put on their back because of the Damon Williams thing, the fact that you hired a coach for $25 million extra dollars a year, and all of that stuff that they publicly put out that was probably going against the spirit of what the House settlement was.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the national college football, I guess, media fans have kind of looked at LSU, maybe even Auburn as well, just in terms of, Ed Orgeron moving on, and then Brian Kelly, his big contract, and then you hire Lane Kiffin for, I think he's now the second highest paid coach in the country, maybe behind Kirby Smart, or maybe the first. I'm not sure on that, but and then you also look at Auburn, like DJ Durkin and Hugh Freeze and these big buyouts for guys like that, and I guess over time you just kind of get skeptical. You get it that there's a lot of history between some of these programs, and LSU is one of those premier athletic programs in terms of football, baseball, women's basketball has always done well, especially under Kim Mulkey there too. But I think what also brings a lot of drama is with LSU is Lane Kiffin, and as much as a great coach he always has been, drama follows him. And whether that is in terms of a sanction matter for recruiting, in terms of a sanction matter within money, within a sanction matter of personal relationships with owners, players, recruits, whatever it is, drama just seems to follow Lane Kiffin. And I can't say I'm sitting here surprised by this, but I will say that I think LSU honestly probably in a way was expecting some of this to happen in some recent manner.
They had to.
Yeah, and I'm sure are prepared for whatever is about to come, whatever they're about to be hit with, and are ready to, I guess, fight in some manner. But I don't think it's necessarily a surprise, but I think that I recently watched a podcast with Ed Orgeron actually speaking about him, and he basically, it was always known that, schools were giving players money and et cetera, but the fact that he just kind of sat there and came out about it and said, yeah, that we were playing players, like, it kind of is a little bit refreshing in a way to sit here and just be able to talk about those things, hear those things, and listen to it just so freely, but also still see some of these things kind of come into fruition for things like LSU as well.
Should be pretty interesting. Anyway, when we come back, we will talk to Daylan Flowers about the highlights of this transfer portal class. Who has his attention? We will hear from him right after this. It is last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one final kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60. And FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of the action with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding the underdog, or building one last same game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It is the perfect way to cap off the season and make Super Bowl 60 even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets. If you win, make it count, because after Super Bowl 60, the season is over. So it's last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Do us a favor, like, subscribe, and comment on the video. Subscribe to the podcast on whichever audio podcast you're listening to and give it a 5-star review. It costs absolutely nothing, but it helps keep all of this free. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network in America. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Ole Miss with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 per year. Go to lockedonolemmiss.supercast.com or check out the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, so Daylan, one thing that I'm looking at in this transfer portal, we're going to talk about names that are going to Ole Miss that have your attention. What's the first name of players that are transferring into Ole Miss?
Oh, that's a great question, man. I honestly love what Pete Golding and his staff did in the transfer portal, at least so far. Attacked a lot of the needs, linebackers, safeties, some edge rushers, definitely having to recuperate within the receiving room offensively as well. I think Blake Purchase is kind of the first name that steps out in my head when I think about the portal. The edge rusher from Oregon, definitely a position of need with everything that has kind of gone on with losing some players and also some guys going to the NFL and et cetera, et cetera. I think Blake Purchase provides a lot of speed off the edge, a really good tackler in the backfield, whether that's rushing the passer or stopping the run. And also something that I've noticed with Pete Golding since his time at Ole Miss is when it's those third and shorts, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3 or shorter, expect a blitz, especially off the edge. Whether it was with Prince Will this past season or Princely Mamiela the year before, and even at times, Son Terry in his first year with Pete, his first year as well. I think Blake Purchase is going to be able to come in and kind of provide a lot of that quality stuff, especially on third downs for Ole Miss. So I think that would be my first kind of just big name off the top of my head. I also like Keaton Thomas, the linebacker from Baylor. I think he provides a lot of, I guess, erasing qualities, which I would say, and I say erasing because when, I had the conversation to talk with Pete Golding before the season started when he was still the DC, he said, linebackers kind of really, in a way, sometimes the hardest position because you're putting a lot on those guys that kind of help check guys and create a lot of stints and change schemes sometimes, especially with the green dot sometimes. And I think Keaton Thomas is, number one, a really good open field tackler. He's a hard-hitting tackler as well. So expect a lot of big plays and maybe some forced fumbles for him this upcoming season for Ole Miss. But also, I think he has a good football IQ. Like, I think he sees the field really well. I think he watches film really well. And I've seen that throughout some of the plays and films that I've kind of watched since he transferred to Ole Miss over the last few weeks. So I'm excited to see him. I guess those are like two guys that stand out the most, but also just quickly offensively, I maybe say like Isaiah Spencer. I think he's an underrated guy, the transfer wide receiver from Virginia Tech. He also played at Jackson State, a Mississippi native. Really good size for a wide receiver, good hands. I think will fit into the system that Ole Miss wants to kind of move into moving forward a little bit, which in saying that it won't be much change offensively with John Baker, but I think he will be a quality guy for his size that you can play on the outside, but also can put in the slot and be really effective there. So I think Isaiah Spencer is a name that's not really going to get talked about a lot right now, but I think can be really, really effective for Ole Miss this upcoming season.
All right, some of the names that I am looking forward to, the highlights of the transfer portal is I think it's Mekhi Barrow, the defensive lineman from Florida. I talked to the Florida football scout, and he was saying Ole Miss is spending money if they're going after these zero technos because there's just not many of them. He has a very high ceiling to the point where he might play over Jaheim Otis, and Jaheim Otis was the guy that was wanted last season in 2025. That was going to be the replacement for Walter Nolan. Almost got Jaheim Otis too. Now, I am interested in Elijah Joseph. I think Edwin Joseph. I'm sorry, Edwin Joseph, the defensive back, free safety type from Florida State. He's a ball hawk. He is really good. I think Ole Miss got into trouble last season. What was kind of their undoing, and the reason they didn't win a national championship is because they couldn't consistently play man coverage because they were bad on the very back end of the defense, especially the safety position. Ole Miss went hard after safeties this year, and they added a Jay Crawford, cornerback from Auburn, who has a chance to be a Trey Amos type cornerback for Ole Miss. So I think you're going to see Ole Miss lean more towards what they did in 2024 defensively over what they did in 2025. And whenever the Trinidad stuff gets through and Ole Miss gets that, this is a top 5 team, and it's not particularly close because the reality of this situation, and if you paid attention during the month of November with appearances on the Pat McAfee show with Kewan Lacey and with Trinidad Chambliss, Lane Kiffin already knew he was leaving, and he already knew he was recruiting those guys, and they would have been the 2 best players in the transfer portal if they got into it. Ole Miss was able to retain both of them, and that was a major league home run for them.
Yeah, that's if Trinidad is able to come back to Ole Miss, that is the best 1-2 punch in college football for this upcoming season. Able to show that this past season with all their qualities, and it's not just the abilities on the football field. I was able to talk to Trinidad after the Fiesta Bowl, and their relationship in terms of off the field is very strong as well, which I think builds into how well they kind of provide for one another on the football field. But I think when you have the ability to, if Trinidad is back, to have both of those guys back, you're then forcing yourself into an offense that is kind of stacked up on the offensive line again, returning a lot of guys as well, but also getting a few guys from the portal to provide quality depth. I think also attack the running back room in the portal really hard to give Keaton Lacey that depth this year, because I think there were times that he necessarily didn't know if you had that or not with Logan Days, but I think you got that in the portal this year. And you may see Chicago Mills not a little bit more this year as well, but I think there's a lot of quality in that running back room as well to provide Keaton Lacey depth. But also I think you look at this receiver/tight end room, there are a lot of questions, but the tight end room really excites me. I personally, he may be my kind of just one of my favorite players in general, but on the team, especially Caleb Odom, I'm really excited to see what his potential is. We talked a lot about him throughout fall camp leading up to this past season. It just his ability as a hybrid receiver/tight end, and we saw a lot of qualities that he can provide in the short passing game. His hands and his size really make him valuable in that, but also his pass blocking ability. If you go back and watch some of his film this year, was really, really puts apart against some of the top teams in the country this year. So I'm excited to see what him and Luke has, and Prescorn coming in as well, what they're able to do. And we also got another tight end as
Michael
well.
Smith. Yeah,
Michael Smith coming in. So I think that'll be another competitive tight end room that will also provide a lot of quality help on those kind of fourth downs, when you need to run the ball a certain way, and kind of providing good, run blocking as well. But also the receiver room, I think people look at it, you lose Stribling, Harrison Wallace are both gone, Caden Lee's out. What's kind of the next step? But I think Ole Miss really attacked that receiver room really hard as well, kind of understanding what fits their scheme, and not necessarily just saying, hey, let's go get this guy because he's a great wide receiver, put up good numbers, but how do we get guys that fit our scheme properly and also can create a lot of plays when things don't go right with the scheme. So I thought Ole Miss receiver-wise also hit the portal hard and understood it's bigger than just getting guys who can put up big numbers, because you saw this with this past Ole Miss team this year. There are a lot of guys that came in like Deshaun Stribling, who was putting up 1,000 receiving yards or nearly at Oklahoma State, and didn't have that this year, but provided quality plays, provided big moments for Ole Miss throughout the year, but was in such a competitive receiver room. No guy really just had 1,500 receiving yards, et cetera, et cetera. So I think you're going to see a little bit of that this upcoming year as well with this Ole Miss wide receiver room.
Yeah, and you see people talk about from time to time on shows like this, on other channels and all that, talking about, Caleb Odom's going to move back outside. He's going to be a wide receiver. Yeah. No, he's not. Nah. The best case scenario for Evan Ingram or for Caleb Odom is being Evan Ingram. That is the path that Caleb Odom was on. And it hasn't been announced officially, but Horatio Fields is likely going to end up and that's the big-bodied wide receiver. You have a Darryl Gill situation, which is another Harrison Wallace type player, and Johntay Cook. I'm telling you, Johntay Cook is the best slot receiver that Ole Miss has had since Elijah Moore. You just have to unlock it. The ceiling is absolutely off the chart. I covered him at the Under Armour All-American game in 2023, whenever that year was, and him and Zachariah Branch, there was one of those situations looking at those two players, and all the years that I've covered the Under Armour game, those are the two players that just made me go, wow. So the ceiling for Johntay Cook is unbelievably off the charts.
That's a clip. I've got to make sure I screen record that, so when the time comes and Johntay Cook puts up big numbers, I'm like, Steven tried to tell you guys all the way back in January that he was going to be able to be a really good guy for Ole Miss.
All right, so when we come back, we are going to change gears and talk about Coach Yo and the Ole Miss Lady Rebs. They got a top 5 win in Birmingham, and what was supposed to be a home game, they were able to pull that off, but we'll talk about that as soon as we get back. Coming up next. This is Mazda's Moving the Game Forward, for those of you that know there's more to the score than what's on the screen. AJ Storr has moved to a 6th-man role for Ole Miss men's basketball, and that has completely unlocked him as a player, and the result is him becoming the go-to player on this Ole Miss men's basketball team. These type of things remind us of what it really takes to raise the bar. It's the extra work off the court, dialing in every detail, giving it that extra fire, that grit, and that I never quit. We put that same passion into every model. Highlights that make the real. What it took to get there makes it count. Because there's more to a Mazda, because there's more to you. That's Mazda, moving the game forward. Things interesting, Daylan, talking about what's going on. Coach Yo and the Lady Rebels beat Vanderbilt by about 8 points. I forget what the score was, but it was a top 5 win for the Lady Rebs. Ole Miss was ranked like 17th. Indy was 5th. This needs to be considered by the committee when it's all done that Ole Miss won the game on a neutral floor as opposed to it being a home game. Because on the schedule, it's going to show a home game, but the game was played in Birmingham. Listen, this is a game that Ole Miss was up by like 19 at halftime. It got a little bit weird in the second half, but at the very end, whenever it had to happen, Ole Miss was able to pull away.
Yeah, it's kind of been like a little bit of a recipe for the women's team this year in terms of just being maybe down at some point or really being really big up at some point and maybe having to battle back and fight through and claw and win out some games. But I think a lot of the Ole Miss fans and even some of the national fan bases that kind of watch Ole Miss lose to Georgia not too long ago by like 20 plus points really tried to just dive into this team and say, that they're not quality enough. They're not going to be able to do much in March. And, this is kind of the Coach Hill special. And I look back at this Vanderbilt win. I look back at the Oklahoma win on the road. I look back at beating Notre Dame early in the season. This team has had one of the hardest schedules in the country and are still ranked inside the top 25 and possibly should be ranked higher, especially after this win against Vanderbilt. This is a Vanderbilt team that has beat LSU this year and has a lot of quality wins this year. Obviously ranked number 5. They didn't have to. But I think when I look at Ole Miss and what's kind of made them different this year compared to maybe some of the past years, and including some Sweet 16 runs over the last few years, they're very well-rounded. And a lot of the teams that Coach Hill has had in the past few years have not been well-rounded in a lot of different areas. And when I say that is, this team this year, and I got this vibe from Coach Hill before the season started, and especially throughout some of the first couple of games this year, is that she has more confidence in shooting the ball around the perimeter this year. And that's never really been a marquee thing for her in prior years, just simply because she didn't feel like she had players that could really do that efficiently. But now she feels like she has got girls like that, like Latasha Lattimore, who's been outstanding this year, and even Cody McMahon, who's come in and kind of played a little bit of a point guard role throughout much of the season. And I was kind of skeptical of that before the season started because obviously she's a forward, and I've known her to be All-American, especially at Ohio State, to be a post big and really be dominant in a low block. But this year she's come in and really kind of controlled the offense, improved as a shooter behind the perimeter, and really just been an aggressive piece for this Ole Miss team, because when she's being more aggressive, I think it feeds to her teammates, and it's allowing people like Christina Walla to really be effective as well, because so much of that attention is going to Cody. It's allowing Christina to put up big numbers like she has. She's put up so many doubles this year. But I think that a lot of this Ole Miss team is so hungry because they're not getting any respect. And some of these girls have been here before, and they've not gotten any respect. They came into this season and didn't get much respect at all, even though they had the number 1 portal class in the country coming in this year, and people still doubted them. So I think that's a big chip on this Ole Miss team this year. A lot of these young girls are feeling like they're disrespected, and Coach Hill feels like she's disrespected. And I think that's buying into a lot of things you're going to see from Ole Miss moving forward, especially after the Georgia loss a few games ago.
All right, so what does this team need to do to put themselves in a host position to where the Pavilion's rocking in March in the first round or two?
Oh, it's a great question, man. I think you just can't shoot yourselves in the foot if you're Ole Miss and Coach Hill. I think that you have – I know that you have the players to compete against arguably anyone in the country. You have the defensive qualities, as Coach Hill has shown, and you have 2 offensive juggernauts in Christine and Cody McMahon that can provide points at any given time of the game. But it's how do you do it on a consistent 4-quarter basis? Like I said when I started, the Notre Dame win was huge early in the season, but Ole Miss was down – I want to say 21 points early in that game. Hanu Daglu really was on fire in the first half, and Ole Miss had to fight and crawl back, had a really bad first quarter. But I think when Ole Miss is playing up to their part every single quarter like they did on the road against a ranked Oklahoma team a few weeks ago, then they can storm into some of those places and win big games. So I think it's just not shooting themselves in the foot, taking smart shots, limiting the turnovers, communicating on defense effectively, and listening to their coaching staff. I think that Coach Hill has assembled a really good quality staff in her new staff, and this is year 2 for them. And there are a lot of great basketball minds on that staff, and I really just think they have to trust their coaches and trust one another as well. But I think this team is ready and hungry and has a great ability to do that. I think something really changed after the Georgia game. I mean, I saw Coach Yo tweet something out after the game, and usually in prior years, if I'm not mistaken, she's not even on social media throughout conference play. But I think that loss really sparked something in her team, and I think you're going to see a little bit of a streak run for this women's team. So I think just not shooting themselves in the foot moving forward, and just being able to play to their highest standard moving forward throughout the rest of the season will allow them to host a game come the March Madness tournaments, which is historical, and it really is, and it's something that I think that Coach O deserves in terms of her tenure here at Ole Miss and what she's been able to do to turn this program around. That's the next step if you're an elite program, to be able to host a region for the NCAA tournament.
Absolutely. And for those who don't know, that Daylan Flowers, he's moved on from the Rebel Walk. Now he's at Ole Miss 365. What are you going to be doing for 365, man?
It's kind of the same thing with Rebel Walk, just in a full-time role, still covering Ole Miss, football, baseball, basketball, women's basketball, more a variety of things. So kind of everything more than I was doing it at Rebel Walk, and doing some more in-person interviews with players. So expect some of that to be coming soon. The winter storm has kind of thrown things off. I got a few things with some baseball players in plan. I can't speak too much about it yet, but hopefully before the baseball season starts, I'm excited about that, and just grateful for the opportunity to join David Johnson and the team at Ole Miss 365. I'm just very thankful for you and for everyone as well for the support and love. But it's just time to get things rocking in a full-time role, and I'm just very excited to be able to stick around Oxford and continue doing what I love at the Heisman. I wasn't ready to leave after graduation. I feel like I'm still finding my fitting in Oxford and still getting my feet wet, and I feel like this is the best place to do it since, my foundation is here and I've gotten, my journey kind of really started here. So I'm just grateful for the opportunity and ready to just continue to bring all Ole Miss athletics to the national light.
That's right. And you will be able to continue seeing him on Locked On Ole Miss. Just like always, Daylan, congratulations, bud. Nobody deserves it more than you. You're just a star in the field in the making, and I appreciate everything you do, buddy. Thank you.
No, thank you. No, thank you, man. Right. And thank you for everything, brother. Appreciate you.
All right. Thank you for tuning into today's Locked On Ole Miss podcast. We're going to continue to talk transfer portal during the next couple of weeks, because now the drop ed date has moved from February 2nd to like February 15th. That's stuff that we're going to talk about. We're on all the social channels as well. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Ole Miss ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to the LockedOnOleMiss.supercast.com to join the club. For those of you on video, we're going to send you the first ever national 24/7 Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you find a second listen, either Locked On College Football or Locked On SEC. Hotty toddy, everybody, and we will see you tomorrow. Take care.